Because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
I'm just giving you the answer to the question you're asking all night long. Why do they vote for Donald Trump? It's not always because they like him. No, it's because stuff like that is kookier to them.
Bill Maher just lit up Adam Schiff, tearing into the California senator over his relentless and failing crusade against Donald Trump. The takedown was so brutal, it wouldn't be a surprise if Schiff never shows his face on Maher's show again. If you're into this kind of no-holds-barred breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another moment like this.
I think it's true justice. The only thing he cares about is himself and money, and going after the money is a way to bring about some real justice.
Adam Schiff came out swinging, launching into his usual tirade against Donald Trump, labeling him a self-obsessed narcissist who, according to Schiff, only cares about power and profit. He didn't hold back, declaring Trump guilty on all fronts and unfit to run the country. With his signature drama, Schiff painted Trump as a ticking time bomb for democracy, warning that another Trump term would spell national ruin. It was classics. Schiff big on bold claims, short on substance, and overflowing with political theater. But then came the moment he'll probably regret forever, a bold prediction that's aging like milk.
I don't share your pessimism about this or your pessimism about the general election. The reason why Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump is because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
Schiff didn't let up. He kept unloading on Trump, tossing out every insult in the book in what looked more like a personal meltdown than a political argument. He was desperate to land a hit, desperate to shift the narrative. But buried in all that noise was the moment that's aged like a rotten headline, his bold, overconfident claim that Joe Biden would easily win the election. At the time, Schiff delivered it with that trademark smugness, like he was reading off a prophecy. But now, with Trump back in power, it's the kind of prediction that makes even his own allies wince. It didn't just miss, it exploded in slow motion, and Schiff's been picking up the pieces ever since. You could see the air shift. Even Bill Maher looked like he was reaching his limit, holding it in with that strained grin. But Stephen A. Smith, he couldn't take it anymore. The glove me off.
And I'm just getting tired of seeing so much stuff targeted in his direction, but somehow, some way he still survives. I mean, we're talking about a situation where he's still going to be the GOP nominee. He's still going to be running for president. You're President Biden. That's the individual that you're going to have to beat. 4 indictments, 91 counts. They ain't even bringing up the bankruptcies, ain't even bringing up this particular issue with this civil case. And somehow, some way, he puts cats to shame because he clearly has more than 9 lives. I mean, come on.
Word in, Stephen A. Smith stormed in like a wrecking ball, no filter, no mercy. He went straight for Adam Schiff and the Democrat hit squad, dragging their years-long obsession with taking down Trump into the harsh spotlight. These folks had pulled every dirty trick in the book. Wall-to-wall media smears, nonstop investigations, digging up decades-old drama, and even comparing Trump to some of history's darkest villains. But here's the kicker. None of it worked. Trump didn't just survive, he thrived. Every scandal was supposed to be the end, but instead he came back louder, stronger, and more untouchable than ever. They've thrown the kitchen sink at him, and he's still standing, still dominating the political battlefield. Love him or hate him, Trump has become the riddle the Democrats just can't solve, and it's driving them mad. That's when Bill Maher steps in, fed up, fired up, and unleashes absolute chaos.
The Atlantic put out an article last year, and it was called "Separating Sports by Doesn't Make Sense."
Right.
And talked about how we separate sports like the WNBA just because it's just socialization. This is insane.
I agree.
Okay. That's why people vote for Trump. Mm-hmm. Because there's stuff like that on the left that people just go, I know Trump's horrible, but separating by sports by makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And if you think it doesn't, you can't leave the country.
Bill Maher didn't dance around it. He went straight for the jugular. Looking Adam Schiff dead in the eye, he laid out exactly why millions of Americans keep voting for Donald Trump. It's not because they think he's flawless, it's because the alternative feels like pure chaos. Maher ripped into the Democratic Party for pushing empty promises and tone-deaf ideologies that feel miles away from what real people care about. And then he hit a nerve, the sports issue. Maher called out the left's bizarre crusade to erase the biological lines between men and women in athletics, forcing Americans to pretend that fairness doesn't matter. For many, it wasn't just dumb, it was offensive to common sense. But instead of listening to the pushback, the Democrats doubled down, brushing off valid concerns as bigotry and steamrolling ahead. Maher's message couldn't be clearer. This kind of ideological madness doesn't energize voters. It repels them. It doesn't build coalitions. It breaks trust. And when Americans are left choosing between woke confusion and someone who at least seems rooted in the real world, they're going to choose reality every single time.
I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole committee.
Did Senator Adam Schiff just throw Joe Biden under the bus? Because that's exactly how it came off. Schiff, a leading voice on the infamous January 6th committee, was among those conveniently pardoned, part of a group that spent months pointing fingers and declaring guilt. But here's the twist. If the committee's work was airtight and bulletproof, why did Biden feel the need to hand out those pardons in the first place? Now Schiff's out here acting like the pardon was unnecessary, subtly hinting that Biden jumped the gun without actually saying it. But the message is loud and clear. Schiff's trying to shield himself from political fallout, even if it means casting doubt on the guy who had his back. It's classic DC. Take the favor, then pretend it never happened. And the cracks are showing. You can bet Biden's inner circle isn't loving how this looks. But Bill Maher wasn't about to let it slide. He didn't just check Schiff, he blasted the media too, calling out the usual suspects for doing what they do best, picking sides instead of reporting the facts.
And so the FBI came in and arrested the judge. Now, I haven't heard that, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read arrested a judge. So is this significant?
Well, I think
I'm not going to comment on something I don't know more about than what you've just told me.
You read about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I read about it, but I don't know.
So you don't trust anything either, and you work for the New York Times.
Well,
Even Bret Stephens, a columnist at the New York Times, can't fully stand by his own newsroom's reporting. Let that sink in. When insiders start questioning the credibility of their own paper, it's a flashing red light that something is seriously broken. That's exactly why so many Americans, including Trump supporters and beyond, have walked away from legacy media. They're not just skeptical, they're done. The trust is gone because the mission has shifted. These once respected outlets were supposed to hold power accountable. Now, they just carry water for the party line. Truth used to be the goal. Now it feels like political theater dressed up as journalism. Every time another trusted name caves to narrative over facts, it confirms what millions already suspect. If you're looking for the truth, don't expect to find it inside the establishment's echo chamber. You've got to break out and dig deeper.
Catholic schools are popular now, even with people who aren't Catholic, because it's the last place you can send your kid to get an old school education. And they just tell the kids, forget about the Jesus stuff. Just, to them, that's okay indoctrination, as opposed to some of the other indoctrination that goes on. And also, the Catholics don't put up with bullshit. They take your phone, you have to learn your P's and Q's and your grammar and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I just don't understand, that parents don't have the whip hand anymore. Not that you should actually use a whip.
Everyone remembers the moment the wheels really started to fall off. It was when the Democrats went full throttle into woke ideology, tossing out common sense, morality, and everything that once grounded American culture. That's when the seams began to rip. Suddenly, children were treated like miniature adults, while parents, especially fathers, were reduced to clueless side characters. Turn on any sitcom and it's all there. The dopey dad, the eye-rolling mom, and the snarky kid who magically knows everything. What began as lighthearted satire turned into a not-so-subtle lecture. The media stopped entertaining and started programming. And the result? A generation raised to believe rules are optional, authority is oppressive, and respect is outdated. Discipline became taboo. Structure was dismantled, and families, once the backbone of society, got pushed aside in favor of virtue, signaling, and progressive pageantry. And now we're living with the consequences. The 2024 election wasn't a fluke, it was the fallout. The public backlash hit like a freight train. And if you listened closely to what even their own insiders were saying before the loss, one thing's clear, they never saw it coming.
I respect the fact that you don't share my pessimism. I truly do. I understand where you're coming from. But I think that's part of the problem. I think the Democratic Party should share my pessimism. I think they should be on high alert. I think they need to treat him with the seriousness that it deserves, because you having a lot of faith in the American people. The man did get over 74 million votes. You've got people that are looking at Joe Biden. I'm not going to call him a cognitive mess or anything like that. That's very disrespectful. I would never speak about our president that way. But when you're 82 years of age, it's not offensive to say you're no longer a spring chicken and you don't seem to have.
It wasn't just their bizarre ideologies that sank them. Schiff and his circle spent years pushing a fantasy that Joe Biden was mentally sharp and fully capable of leading the nation. But as the cracks became impossible to ignore, they doubled down. They brushed aside growing bipartisan concern. They dismissed obvious signs of decline. They told the public, don't worry. But we should have. By the time reality kicked down the door, the damage was already done. Biden wasn't up for the moment, and deep down they knew it. So what did the so-called party of strategy do? They scrambled and threw Kamala Harris into the spotlight like she was some kind of reset button. But instead of saving the ticket, she turned into a punchline. Her approval nosedived, her speeches flopped, and whatever hope they pinned on her crumbled fast. Their plan had no backup, just spin. Now they're stuck with a political mess of their own making, pushing fringe nonsense, abandoning basic logic, and doubling down on leaders the country doesn't trust. And the voters they once counted on? Gone. Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith aren't just venting, they're echoing what millions are thinking. Americans are exhausted from the lies, the fake outrage, and the endless blame game. Trump's staying power? It's not just about Trump. It's about a country that's sick of being played. The left tried to script the story, but truth has a way of kicking through the narrative. Even their own voices are starting to break ranks. That's it for today's video. If this hit home, smash that like button, subscribe, and stick around for more bold, unfiltered commentary. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.